Hey, and welcome back to Game Talk. I'm your host, Eamon Mion. Today I'm joined by Connor
Hey guys.
and Mike.
Hello.
And there's a variety of topics I want to talk about today. But to start off, just sort of where we left off last week, we were predicting who would be the next Smash Bros. Character, and also just talking about how good the Smash Bros. DLC model is as a whole. And lo and behold, we have Minecraft Steve,
Wasn't it
uh,
like a
Minecraft representation in Smash.
Yeah, I don't know. This is the first one where like people are mad about it, but I'm like kind of here for it. Like,
It makes
I don't know.
so much sense. Minecraft's like
Oh yeah.
the best-selling game of all time, I think.
Yeah,
So
and like I don't know. I think it's weird. I expected this like a year ago. Like I was totally ready for it around the time like Banjo and Byleth were announced. And I was like ready for it, but like where it didn't happen then, I just kind of decided it wasn't going to.
yeah,
And
it's
so it really
interesting.
kind of threw me off.
We now have two Microsoft reps with Banjo and Steve, and it's interesting that Banjo went first. Like I mean, Banjo's like been a highly requested character for Smash forever now, so maybe they decided to go with Banjo first. But Steve makes sense on every level to me. Like there's so many kids out there who are just over the moon with this announcement.
Yeah,
And
Banjo
it,
was definitely more hype for me, but I think I'll actually play Steve more. His moveset looks
yeah,
super
looking at
fun. I haven't
the
downloaded it yet. I've
gameplay
been
is
busy.
the gameplay is honestly kind of jaw-dropping. Like Sakurai is a genius in his ability to take the essence of a game and bring it to Super Smash Bros. You know what I mean? Like
Oh yeah.
it's
The
the
fact
way
that yeah, the
they
fact that they
implemented his
reworked
mining
every
mechanics and
yeah,
reworked
every
every
level
level, just ridiculous.
to work with his
Yeah.
mining. Yeah.
Everything we thought we'd left behind.
And like just watching some game, like the character's out now, just watching people play him and stuff, like he seems pretty high level. Like his frame data is really good, and like it seems like he might be a little overpowered. I don't know. Like
It's hard not to make a character that can literally change the stage overpowered. Like that's tough to balance.
having
Yeah.
like played him a little bit, he feels just weird.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
like he's kind of Mega Man-esque, right? In the sense that like his A attack is just like Mega Man's is like his blaster, right? But Minecraft Steve is just like him waggling his sword, and like his jump is really bad, but like the building makes up for that, I think, and like the minecart is deadly in more way than one because you can attack with it and trap people with it, and it's just
Yeah.
I love that they have like the different like grades of metals from Minecraft as well. Like you can start with wood and you go up to like iron, and eventually you get to diamond, and all of that's represented in the game. They even have the property of like gold breaking quicker from Minecraft itself
My
in the game
personal
as well.
favorite thing about like Minecraft Steve, and I will not call him Steve because he's Minecraft Steve,
Mhm.
is the fact
that
Yeah,
the
that
Minecraft
it feels
Steve
weird
from Minecraft?
saying
Yeah.
Steve has joined Smash Bros. That's just
Minecraft Steve.
like what? Yeah, go ahead.
But the fact that he gimps all these characters that have been made that can't recover any direction other than low.
Oh yeah.
Like Little Max.
Something I wasn't aware that Alex was like I hesitate to use the word canon, but like Alex from Minecraft, like the girl skin. I didn't
Yeah, I didn't
realize
know
that
she
that
had a
was, like-
name. Honestly,
Yeah, I knew that that was like one of the default skins, but I didn't know. And I think I even knew it had a name, but I didn't know that it was like that big of a deal. I guess, and like probably good that it is.
yeah, and
I
I
just
do
didn't
like
know
how
about that.
I do like how like the announcer actually, you know, changes the name of the character based off the skin you pick. Like he actually says like Alex or
That's cool.
or Steve or like Enderman or Zombie. Like
Yeah, if I play Steve, I'll be Enderman all the way. That's the
yeah,
coolest
Enderman's
one.
skin is definitely the coolest one. But it's just every single time a Smash Bros. Character comes out, it always blows me away with just the attention to detail and the love Sakurai and his team put into integrating that character into Smash Bros. Like every single time.
Yeah,
Like
it's incredible.
It's remarkable.
The only person I personally know that's been upset by it is one of my friends who really wants Master Chief, and he thinks that this means that Chief isn't super likely. Because
Anything's possible now. If we
Yeah,
got
it's
Minecraft
already-
yeah.
Steve.
I do think anything is possible.
Yeah, I still think Master Chief is not off the table at all.
It's not off the table, but if you were to ask me to guess the next 4 reps, I would
I would
probably
not.
leave him out.
Yeah, the Doomslayer is way higher on like the likelihood for me than Master Chief, and the Doomslayer is not particularly high.
Yeah, and unfortunately, we have the safe pick of like we probably are going to get a next gen Pokemon as well. And again, like we mentioned last time, in terms of gameplay wise, the Pokemon all play great, so that's not a worry. It's just the idea of an exciting rep.
Yeah. Yeah, that would actually be really boring. Get Scorbunny in there or something.
Yeah,
Oh, why not that Chameleon sniper rifle?
Inteleon.
Yeah.
Elion.
It'd be interesting if it wasn't a starter this time.
Yeah, it would be like a Lucario type pick.
Yeah, I don't know any of the next gen Pokemon though, because I don't. care.
Like it's funny, like first 3 generations of Pokemon, I could probably name you all of the Pokemon from memory, but like after
can't
that,
name one
they all just
from
sort
Sword
of
and
blend
Shield.
together.
Then again, I didn't play it, so it makes sense that I can't name them. But
You just
Yeah,
named
after a certain
Scorbunny. What are
point,
you
you
talking
just-
about?
no, I
Forget about
can't name one
Pokemon.
non-starter. Yeah,
Ah, okay, yeah.
of course I know Scorbunny. That thing's adorable.
Yeah.
Why not? What was that Chameleon's name?
Sobble.
Sobble. Yeah.
Yeah, Sobble's
Man,
good
I'm
too.
proving my own
Sobble
point,
was
aren't
my
I?
pick. Yeah.
Was Grookey the third one?
Yeah, it was Groupie Gang, if I remember correctly.
Actually,
Yeah.
so Scorbunny's final evolution was like so overpowered they actually like banned it in tournament play. I'm pretty
That's
sure.
hilarious.
Yeah.
Can you imagine not being able to use your starters?
Well,
Imagine not being able to
advanced
use those.
Pokemon is just like a level too sweaty for me to even comprehend. That's just like
Yeah, dude.
I
Speaking of, this is a bit divergent, but speaking of sweaty, have you guys seen the like complaints about score-based matchmaking in Call of Duty?
I never get those complaints. Like,
can
They've
you
started to
elaborate?
make a. Yeah. So, okay. So from my perspective, what it really looks like, and everybody is complaining about score-based matchmaking in casual in Call of Duty, and what it looks like to me is a bunch of sweaty players want to win all the time,
Yeah.
and they're getting paired against other sweaty players and complaining about it, because that's what their posts look like a lot of the time. They're like, man, I just wanted to hang out and chill and win. I didn't want to play a bunch of sweaty players, and like that post, has to come from another sweaty player. Like that's, you're
Okay,
looking in the
so-
mirror.
Why isn't
But-
there just like a social matchmaking system and a ranked matchmaking system?
Well, that's what it used to be, but they wanted people in casual to have a decent chance of winning. Like if I hopped on a Call of Duty game right now, any Call of Duty game I've ever played, my odds of doing decently have been extremely low because I'm not very good at Call of Duty,
Mhm.
or at least on console. And so, like, with score-based matchmaking, that means I'm going to be pitted against other people that are terrible at the game, like me, and I
Yeah.
like that, even in casual. Like, in casual, having a 50-50 chance of winning, that's awesome to me, But
Yeah.
the other side of the coin that does kind of suck is that, like, my friend Antonio is extremely good. I am extremely bad.
Right.
If he and I want to play together, we're going to get matched against people who are extremely good.
the thing is, apparently Call of Duty's been using score-based matchmaking in some form since MW2.
Yeah, and, like, it's just...
It's
even
just been
even
so
after what I just said,
undertuned that people
like, I feel
haven't
like
paid
if you
attention.
play with your friend very much at all, you're going to end up at the same skill level eventually. Like, I don't know.
Yeah,
I
I
have
mean-
no problem with score-based matchmaking in any, because I play a lot of games that have score-based matchmaking.
Yeah, I'm in favor of it pretty much all the time. Like, I definitely don't like... I don't know. I like even games. Even games are always more interesting to me.
Definitely more exciting. Yeah, like I don't think I have an opinion either way on this because I just don't play enough multiplayer for this to matter to me too much. But
Yeah, I don't play I'm kind of in the same boat, but I have an opinion on it, but maybe that opinion's not earned, if that makes any sense. Because I don't play a ton of multiplayer games, because I'm not, I don't know, I played them a lot in high school, and I think this is a
Same,
common thing.
yeah.
You play them a lot in high school when you have all this time and, like, limited funds, so you're like, yeah, let me grab this one game that I'm going to play for hundreds of hours and stuff, and, like, get really good at and have fun. But now I'm older, and my time's a little more limited, and also I have money and can play a lot of games, and so I'd rather play these tight single player experiences that don't last quite as long. Than
Right, but
these,
I do think there's something to be said. Like a lot of people just straight up prefer multiplayer games just because they love.
oh yeah,
the
that's just
competitive
my
element,
experience. I'm not saying
Right.
that that's everybody. Yeah,
Yeah.
because my
Yeah,
friend
there have been a
Antonio
lot
is
of
in a
people
similar
that
boat to me, but he'd still rather play Call of Duty for a couple 100 hours because that's what he's into.
Right. Yeah.
And for the record, his opinion is that skill based matchmaking is a good thing.
hmm
No, it's mostly just sweaty people on the internet, which
Yeah.
Yeah,
just wanna
it's
win.
actually funny. This conversation came up in the games I've been playing. One of the games I was going to talk about is actually Call of Duty Warzone. I've been playing quite a bit of Warzone with my cousin and his friend, and people are very, very sweaty online.
Oh yeah.
It's like, like I'm like a casual compared to these people. It's just absolutely wild. Like you pop your head out for like 1 millisecond, you get sniped from across the map.
Oh yeah.
That sort of thing. But But yeah, another thing I kind of wanted to touch on, maybe we could go through this briefly, is that in terms of news, PlayStation surprisingly, just kind of shadow dropped today a look at their UI, and I do think personally, I feel like it's very sleek and minimalist, and it might be my favorite console UI that I've ever seen. But that's not really saying much. I mean, like,
Yeah, I still think I
UIs
prefer the
aren't-
Switch, but it's really good.
see the Switch UI, in my opinion, is good, but it's too minimal, I think.
See, the only thing I don't like, and this is true of like, and I'm gonna sound like a boomer here, but like, even on like Steam, I'm like, I click live, it's super obvious. Like, you click library, you click game, you're in the game. Whereas like with Xbox and PS4 and stuff, like you have all these icons on the screen at the same time, and like. The PS4, I never really had this problem, but I've picked up an Xbox and had to like sit there and stare at it for a
I
minute to
have
try
had
to
that
figure out how to
problem
launch a game.
with Xbox. I have had that problem with Xbox before. PS4, it's pretty clear because I think the game, like the squares or whatever, are in order of like your recently played, and again, this problem will be further alleviated on PS5 because they have a games tab and a media tab. So
Yeah,
on your
I
games
think
tab,
the PS5
I think
one.
yeah.
To be clear, I think the PS5 looks excellent. The UI, I don't have any complaints about the PS5 UI, but
Yeah,
I still think I prefer the Switch.
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't think Xbox has ever. Well, there was a good Xbox UI, the original 360 UI before they
with
did
the
like
blades.
yeah,
I
the
really
Blade UI
enjoyed
was
those.
really
Yeah.
good, and then
See, I don't.
they completely
don't
ruined
know
it
that.
with like the new one.
Right, Connor's never had a 360, so
No,
I don't-
my only 360 experience is with the new UI, which is
The
abysmal.
NGE. Yeah, the
Like,
new AI
yeah.
is garbage.
No, I
The-
remember when the 360 UI got updated. I was like, "What is this?
They're
Why
like,
did
the
they do
new
this?"
game experience? Look at
that was
this
like when
funny
the
character.
360 avatars came out, right?
Yeah, no,
Right, like
it was
everyone was
avatars.
copying Mii's and like trying to integrate with Kinect, and I was just like, "Ugh."
Does the 360 does the Xbox still use avatars, or is it like one of those features that just
They do.
exists?
I'm pretty sure they do.
Why?
Yeah. I mean, they're not like in your face like they were before, but like they're still a thing.
It's so
But yeah, just getting back
bizarre.
to the PS5 UI, I think the thing that impressed me the most, even though I will probably like almost never use it, was just like uh the picture in picture stuff they showed. So like say your friend is like playing a game, they can start sharing and you can instantly, click on that and start watching what they're playing and then just have it like pinned up like as you play it. I think that
is cool.
that sort of integration is very cool. And I also thought like just the party integration was cool. Like the fact that like you can see like when you bring up your PlayStation menu in mid game, you can be like, okay, your friends are here in this party and they're playing this game. You just click of a button and like we saw how fast that load time was. That was a cold boot when they switched from Sackboy to Destruction All Stars, and that booted in a matter of seconds. And I think that seamlessness is going to be really, really cool
Yep.
to experience.
I
And
do have one concern about this was while they were playing Sackboy. They opened up those menus and they were like, yeah, in some cases like you can find your challenge and click on it and go straight to where the challenge is. And like I see the use case for that.
Yes. So I did want to touch on that. Yeah, like I think so first of all, I feel like the only games in which that section of the UI is actually going to be populated is like Sony first party games. Like I don't think other
Yeah, I
developers are
agree
going
with
to
that.
do the work to like like for each minute like section of the game, like each achievement or each
Well, I
story
also-
mission. Like
It's a bad idea. Like, because well, I mean, I get the use case for it and all, and I think that the fact that it like shows you how long stuff takes to complete,
Yeah.
that's super neat. But like,
I would
menus-
never. I don't think I would ever use that stuff.
Yeah,
but
menus
I
aren't
like
fun.
that it's there. I think.
Menus are not fun, and like I see myself like going to this like wanting to complete a game or whatever, going to this menu and like just totally dissolving all the fun that I could have had with this game using this menu. Like,
See, the thing is, okay, so I think one, I don't think I'll ever use that UI function specifically because like I don't really like looking things up about games I'm playing, even like time to play and stuff. Like I like being surprised by game length and stuff like that. But the point is, I think for people like who aren't like as, I guess for lack of a better word, serious about gaming as we are, people who only like pick up 1 or 2 titles a year, people who treat gaming as like a very casual thing. Like, I think it'd be very useful for them, like, if they're playing and they're like, okay, I don't really know what to do here, or I don't know how to get this item, to just pop open that interactive game UI menu and just get some hints that way.
Yeah, that seems like a nice feature. Although, did they show anything of like time played?
I don't think so, and that would be a huge miss if they don't have that.
That's something that every platform needs. If you don't have it,
Xbox
it's
has
not
that,
good.
Nintendo has that. That's, like, that's...
Even
does PS4 not have that?
PS4 does not have that.
Even like a rough
Wow.
estimation. Is
Yeah, that
nice.
would be a travesty. That's probably, actually, now that you bring it up, that's like my most desired like UI feature for time played in games.
Like
So
even
hopefully,
like,
yeah.
Switch gives me like a rough estimate of like you've played Animal
Right.
Crossing for 200 hours ish.
Just while we're on that note, why is it a rough estimate? Like,
I don't know.
I don't
because
know.
there's no way they don't
Just
have the exact
data to
number.
capture,
They don't want to really. They want you to hide your shame behind like, oh, he's only played 100+ hours. It's fine.
Yeah, like there's no way that
No,
the
but the
exact
Switch
number
one's
isn't there.
super weird because they like their arbitrary cutoff is like 5-hour intervals, right?
Yeah,
Like from what I've seen, right? Like it's like you've played 55 hours or you've played 65 plus hours. It's just like, why not just like, what's the point? I don't get it.
yeah, just tell me the exact number like Steam does. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
although Steam's isn't particularly accurate for some reason. Like, I know a couple of games I have played more. It must have been an offline mode or something, which I thought it still tracked your time. But like, I know I've played these games way more than they say I have.
Yeah, I know for a fact the Switch tracks time and offline.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe you do have to be online for Steam. I don't know.
Yeah, you do have to be online for Steam.
But
Yeah, overall,
Anything done offline.
I think the UI looks nice. I think it's functional.
Yeah, I think, and I think this is enhanced emphasis on like playing with your friends and stuff. Like obviously, for someone like me who mostly plays single player games, it's just like a nice add on. But for people who like their whole ecosystem is on PlayStation and they're playing Destiny or Call of Duty with their friends on PlayStation all the time, these new features are going to be huge for them.
Yeah, the game, like the thing where you could watch your friend play and also play your game at the same time, that's huge to me. Because, like, that's
Yeah.
something I've been doing lately on PC. I've hooked up a second monitor, and, like, I'll just hop on with my buds and we'll stream whatever game we're playing, even though we're not playing the same thing. And I'll have theirs up on my second monitor while I'm playing mine.
Mm-hmm.
And it just kind of gives a bit of a sense of that, like, LAN party feel. Like,
It does, yeah.
and that's so important right now. Like, you can't be in the same room, but maybe it's nice to feel like you are for a little bit, you know?
Right, yeah.
Services like Discord coming up with like just sit in a voice chat and stream to each other. It's always nice because you don't have to go through the hoops of getting like a Twitch or streaming on Twitch or
Exactly.
doing any of that complex stuff.
Just
I think
quickly-
anything that lowers the bar to entry for content creation too. This is kind of unrelated, but like being able to record video and like not have to buy a capture card. I don't understand how, like, because I feel like PS4 kind of messed it up, right? Like their video recording and streaming stuff, because doesn't it like cut you off during cutscenes and stuff?
I think that's like up to the developer, like they can
That's-
specify if like they don't want this scene recorded for like story reasons or something like that.
See, that's such a bad play because, like, you could be the more people who can be doing content creation, the better, in my opinion.
I
And you're
agree,
just putting
yeah.
up a wall because you literally if you have that restriction, you don't get to do content creation because
Yeah, I've
I'm not
seen.
gonna watch a video that cuts out during all the cutscenes and stuff.
So personally, I've seen this issue come up more with like Japanese centric developers and publishers. You know, like the most infamous being like I think
Persona 5.
Atlas with Persona.
Yeah.
Yeah, like they basically wouldn't allow any of the game to be streamed because they wanted to protect all spoilers, which is just a little silly.
it's a little silly because the people who
Are
are
going to
most
interact with
likely to
that
be revealing these
content.
spoilers are the ones with capture cards. You know,
Yeah, and they're basically turning down free marketing for their game,
And-
which is,
As an argument to this whole point, if someone's looking up content for a game and you don't want to show it, that's a signal to me as like a consumer that I don't want to actually buy this game since it could be terrible after a certain point.
Sort of like how Bethesda doesn't give out review codes
Yeah.
early anymore.
If you like blog
embargoes or
off
whatever.
after like a halfway point in the game, I just don't want to buy the game because it could be awful.
Oh yeah, I don't trust anything that only lets you see the first half of the game because that tells me that the second half of the game is Final Fantasy 15
well,
level.
no, well, the thing is that's actually very common in like game previews for at least for like the AAA style games, right? Like most often the previews are only from like the first, section of the game. Like very, very rarely do I see game previews come out with like things from like the latter half of the game. Like that's just I think the norm right
Yeah.
now.
And I think that's a shame because you look at Breath of the Wild is the example that comes to mind. A lot of the previews were of the Great Plateau.
Yeah.
And that's great. The Great Plateau is a fantastic part of the game, and the rest of the game also happen to be fantastic. But the Great Plateau and the rest of the game are not very similar, in my opinion. The Great Plateau has you solving all sorts of problems and puzzles and stuff that the hang glider immediately gets rid of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is going to be a hard swerve, but you saying Breath of the Wild triggered something in my memory. Have either of you heard of Genshin
I
Impact?
have.
Yeah, I actually pulled it down and tried to play it, and I'll be honest, I was not in the biggest good. I wasn't in the best mood to be trying new things, but I'm on my base PS4 and the
Mhm.
frames dropped during the tutorial and I turned it off and I haven't gone back.
That's about right.
Yeah,
just-
I hear a lot of comparisons to Breath of the Wild for some reason. And
have you played it?
No, I haven't. I
see why they're making those comparisons.
ads on
It's-
YouTube for it all the time, and I'm just like, this seems neat, but I don't really know what this is. And it's
a
an
big
MMO, so
open
that
world
inherently
game.
scares me. Yeah.
I've seen people calling it a 2 out of 10 and I've seen people calling it a game of the year contender.
Yeah.
But I think the big thing is whether or
Wait,
not
so is
you
it an
can-
MMO? It's an MMO,
No,
right?
it's an RPG.
Oh, I thought it was okay.
No, it's a gotcha game basically.
Yeah, it's a gotcha
Like,
game over the top of a Breath of the Wild.
Yeah, and it doesn't do much like Godfall or whatever, Phoenix
Mhm.
Rising, whatever.
Yeah.
It doesn't get what made Breath of the Wild so good, really, but it does make an interesting open world, if that makes sense. From what I've heard, it doesn't have the super in-depth chemistry system and the awesome physics interactions and combat and stuff, but it does have a decent action RPG on top of a Breath of the Wild style open world.
See, okay, so this might reveal a little closed-mindedness from me, but I saw like a gaming article that was titled 10 Reasons Why Genshin Impact is Better Than Breath of the Wild. And I just saw that title. I was like, there's no way. And I didn't even click on it.
Oh yeah, there's no way that's true.
Yeah.
It's not going to be better than Breath of the Wild unless you're I mean, I bet there are a lot of people in China who would like it more because gotcha games are huge there. you know?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So
And
that's
for us-
interesting to me. That it's surprising to hear that it's not an MMO. I totally thought it was an MMO.
I don't think it has any multiplayer at all.
Wow.
It does. It has
Okay.
co-op.
Oh, it does? Okay. Well, I'd be down to play it a little bit if one of you try it, but
I mean,
Hi.
it's a
Next
yeah
gen.
free to play.
yeah,
Breath
I've
of
been
the
meaning to give it
Wild,
another
like,
shot because I've seen a
it's
bunch of very high praise for it, but I just don't. I don't know. I got a lot of games on my backlog.
I mean, I feel like so you say it's a gotcha game. So like their whole idea is to get you to spend tons of money on like random stuff, right?
Yeah, random characters, I believe. Yeah, little anime girls.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't feel it. I don't like those.
Yeah, and what little gameplay I saw, it looked like the enemies were going to be like super tanky, and that I have very little patience. Even Breath of the Wild got a little tanky for my liking towards the end.
I
The
feel like
Lionels
we
and
should
stuff.
make a trend in gaming away from like bullet sponges.
Yeah, Lionels didn't bother me. It was like white and black moblins that really got to me
Mm.
because they didn't feel like they earned that giant HP bar.
But so, Mike, you bring up a good point. You know, like bullet sponges are kind of bad,
They
but
are.
like at the same time, like for games like I guess Destiny and like MMO kind of bosses, right? Like how else do you handle that? I'm
God,
just curious. You
a
know,
lot of enemies. A lot of enemies is always better than one enemy with a giant HP bar. I hate sitting there, putting my mouse over top of someone's head and pulling the trigger
see,
for 45
like
minutes.
I'm fine with bosses with lots of health, right? If their mechanics are interesting and like the fight
Yeah.
evolves as it progresses and stuff, you know. But like
I-
they're
have either
they're
of you
like
guys
go ahead.
have either of you guys been playing Sea of Thieves lately?
No.
Me and my friends got a little excited because they added in quotes I say 5 new bosses. So we checked one out and it took us 45 minutes to kill this boss. We had seen every single attack within 5 minutes.
Oh no.
And yeah, it took an additional 45 minutes. And this wasn't just us. There were it was me and my 2 friends plus 2 other players showed up and helped us fight it, which I think its health is like based on how many people are there. So it's probably going to take about 45 minutes no matter how many people you have. And like that wasn't fun. Like we were just like, there's no fruit left in the barrels. I gotta go grab some new ammo. Yeah, because the combat's just not deep enough in that game
Yeah.
to support. And then we found out it didn't add 5 new bosses. It added 5 skins of one boss, and then expected you to kill all 5 of those 5 times each to get all the loot related to that event.
Dude, that's
And
like the
that's
most
the kind of thing that
that's-
Mike is like, that has to stop. That's terrible.
Yeah,
That doesn't
that's
respect
Very
time.
terrible.
that's the most games as a service thing I've ever heard.
It
You
was
know.
so, and we haven't touched it since then because it was so like we beat it once and we were like, all right, that was all right. I guess that was, I mean, not terrible. It wasn't really fun. We immediately said like, well, we'll never fight that boss again. And then we found out that they're all 5 the same, and we were just like, oh,
This is fun.
Oh, you know, just talking on like bullet spongy bosses, I'll never forget. Like before Destiny, the original Destiny game came out, like I played the beta, and like the beta content was like a strike, which is like slightly longer than your average like story mission, right? And you can play it with friends. And I remember the boss at the end of the strike just being this giant orb that like slowly drifted around, teleported, and you just like shot it a bunch. It was a bullet sponge, right? Like
that's the lamest
essentially
thing I've ever heard of.
you gunned it down for minutes on end and chipped away at its health, and like nothing really changed. And I was just like, okay, this is pretty lame.
Yeah, no,
And
if
you
your
know, like-
boss fight lasts more than 10 minutes and it's not like a turn-based RPG, that's not a good boss fight. Like,
Yeah, and I think like a lot of games as a service games run into this problem even today. You know, like a way of like their mini bosses and bosses are essentially just bullet sponges with very basic behavior, right? But I do want to give credit where credit is due to Destiny because fast forward to now, right? Like they still have some of those kinds of bosses, but for the most part, like raid bosses and even strike bosses have unique mechanics. And like, yes, they're bullet sponges, but like as the fight progresses, the mechanics of the fight change and keep things interesting. And I think that's the way to fix this problem.
Yeah.
maybe. It's just, I don't know. Boss fights and shooters just don't go great together, in my opinion.
No,
It depends. Sometimes
overall, I
you can make
think
like a
that's
good boss
accurate.
fight that has good mechanics, but a lot of devs are, well, I hate to say it, but lazy, and they're just like, oh, we'll just make a giant health pool in this thing. That's fun, right?
I don't know that lazy's the word. I think a lot of them just can't
Maybe uninspired.
figure out a better way to. Yeah, uninspired, I think, is fair. Because, like, I don't like the word lazy ever for developers except Nintendo, with specifically with the Super Mario 3D All Stars release.
Like Warframe has some interesting
Actually,
boss
that's not-
fights.
That's not even lazy
Why?
devs. That's a cheap developer. But
You just have to
Yeah,
integrate mechanics into there.
I mean, so it's been a while since I've played Destiny, but I encourage you guys, if you're curious about like bullet sponge bosses done right, in my opinion. Like I would look up Oryx from Destiny 1 and Riven from Destiny 2. I think those two boss fights have really great mechanics. Especially Riven. So like Riven is the raid boss, one of the raid bosses in Destiny 2. And like after you kill it and rip out its heart, like the encounter isn't over because you have to like leave the area before the heart like collapses and kills everyone. It's like it's super cool. Like I don't know. I think Destiny in general does a good job now of like bosses with insane amounts of health.
You know who did bullet sponges right was Doom Eternal. There are a couple of enemies that are a little bullet spongy, and then the final boss of Doom Eternal is extremely bullet spongy.
Mm-hmm.
But the whole fight, it's like this giant thing you're fighting. I'm not going to spoil it too much, but it's a giant demon. Surprise. And you have all these small demons also attacking you, so like it's basically just like the other encounters you've had in the game plus a boss fight. And so like that extra tension, you know? And that was a fairly long boss fight with a fairly large health bar. And that stayed interesting the whole time to me because I was having to make decisions constantly. I think the real problem isn't the health bar. It's when you can get into a rhythm and the boss fight is already over. Like you've mastered this rhythm, the fight is over minutes before you actually finish it. That's the problem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's when, and I feel the same way about puzzle games. If you know the solution and then it takes you 5 minutes to actually execute it, that's not a good puzzle, or at least not a good mechanic. Like,
yeah, that comment on boss fights is really interesting, where you're sort of being tested on what you know, right? And like if you've mastered it and it still goes, it gets stale. I think the game that probably has my favorite boss fight of all time is Sekiro: Shadows Die Twice, the final boss. That final boss is the perfect final exam of, you know, everything you've learned in the game up to that point. And if there's even one thing you don't have mastered, you're just finished.
yeah.
In that boss fight. Like there's no room for error.
Yeah, Souls bosses typically have like very rational amounts of health to like test you, at least on new game. Once you get into new game plus and stuff,
right, then you become
yeah. But yeah, because what I'm sitting here thinking of is like people make fun of Mario fights and stuff because you do the same thing 3 times, but like yeah, that's how many, if you can do it 3 times, you figured it out. Why would you do it more than that? Like there's no it wasn't gonna get harder. And sometimes there is a second phase with 3 more or something, but like if you can do it 3 times, then you can do it 150 times. Like it's the same thing. Yeah. So I agree that I haven't seen much of the Sekiro final boss. I actually have had it spoiled for me a little bit, although I've seen little enough of the game that it kind of means nothing to me.
Yeah, it shouldn't really mean anything to you, especially considering that there's multiple, story paths and stuff like that.
But that looks like a good final boss.
Oh god, yes. Yeah, it was incredible. Like the euphoria, the adrenaline I got when fighting and finishing that guy, like that was unbelievable. Sekiro is an insane game, and I hope they make a sequel.
Yeah.
But yeah, we sort of veered into many directions with that
Very much
conversation.
veered.
But I think initially we were just talking about the PS5 UI.
Yeah,
But,
we meandered a good bit, but that's fine.
But no, that's good. Yeah. But
I kind of like to move into horror games. If
Yeah,
you guys
yeah,
start
let's do
feeling
it.
spooky.
yeah,
It's
so it's
spooky.
October right now. It's like the middle of October when we're recording this, and it's getting about that time, that spooky time.
Yeah, I don't know about you guys, but I've already binge watched both The Haunting of Hill House again and The Haunting of Bly Manor.
Not
So I've
not gonna say anything, but I changed my Animal Crossing music to spooky music. Literally, the only thing I've done in Animal Crossing all in the last 2 months was change my music in my house.
My neighbors
So-
are nice and decorated.
Oh, nice. Well, I was gonna say I haven't consumed any horror content yet, except for a video game, which
I started consuming horror content in August. But yeah, do you want to talk about
Yeah.
your game first?
well, I've been playing Resident Evil 7 Biohazard, right? So I
I tried to start that because it got added to Game Pass. I think that was back in August, and I don't like it.
really
I think
I think it's incredible, personally.
I didn't find it scary at all. It was just kind of gory. Like the jump scares did nothing for me. It didn't really spook me that much. And like something about it, like I didn't get super far into the game, but I got to a part where like the guy, the man is wandering the halls and like
Yeah.
you're supposed to sneak around and go somewhere. Like I think you're looking for a phone or something. I can't remember. I really can't remember. And I was just like, I don't really like this. And I uninstalled it.
Okay,
I
yeah.
don't
I think
like
you were
this.
still like in the sort of tutorial
I'd-
section of the game.
I'd fought the girl.
Oh, okay. So then you just got into the house. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I had fought the girl. Yeah,
No,
I was
so-
at the dinner table. It was right after I was at the dinner table.
So I'm having a blast with this game. I think it's super scary, but my fear tolerance is also very low. I get scared very easily. So maybe that's a part of it. But but here's the thing. So like this game has full VR compatibility.
God, on PlayStation, it doesn't have it
on
anywhere
on
else.
PlayStation, yeah. But like playing this game in VR is probably the single scariest thing I've ever done in my life. And like so much so that I can't play it in VR. Like I'm just playing it normally now. Like the VR version is just too scary. It's because like you're in it, you know, like you feel like you're in it more so than when you're just playing from a first person perspective.
Yeah, that's why I'm excited to play Phasmophobia because it has VR support.
Yeah,
Oh,
we might
wow.
have to buy
Yeah.
that.
Yeah,
Buy it
just-
right
just-
now.
Talking about horror in general, I definitely feel like VR is like end game horror, you know, like that's
Yeah.
what horror's been trying to achieve all these years, actually putting you in that scary house, actually like putting you in that situation being chased by like a monster, you know?
See, I have a super high tolerance for horror, I think, especially in games. I kind of, this is probably not a super popular opinion, or I don't think it'll be unpopular. It's really just the way games hit me, but like things that are actionable are not super scary to me. Like, if I can do anything about it, it's not that scary. Like, I just go into, like, gotta get this done. Like, gotta, I gotta do it. No, I don't really have a choice here. And it doesn't bother me that much. Like, it bothers me a little bit, but, like, I don't know. Like, I played a game a while back. I think I talked about it on the podcast called Blair Witch, and I spent a lot of that game in that mode. But that game worked for me because it was largely a walking sim.
Mm-hmm.
But once you introduce guns and like shooting at the monster and stuff, it kind of stops being scary
Yeah, I
at all to
think-
me. I think
yeah,
that
that-
ruins horror for me.
Yeah, I think it's a fine line, especially when it comes to games. If you give the player too many tools to fight back against what's scaring you, then it sort of just becomes an action game,
Yeah.
right? But
Yeah.
like I think, you know, like the best horror games like toe that line very well. You know, like some tools to resist, but like at the same time, like you know you can't like you're not invincible, right? Like you're very vulnerable even with like guns or weapons or whatever you're given.
I'm also far more scared of something that is like extremely difficult to understand. And like Resident Evil 7, like I don't know why they're immortal, but like it was immediately obvious, like, hey, these guys don't die. That's their whole shtick. And suddenly it just kind of like I don't know. The mystery just didn't bring me in too much.
Yeah,
Whereas,
I
like-
won't like there is a mystery element to RE7, but like I will say that like the more I play it, the more unnerving and bizarre the game gets.
Yeah.
I do think like the section I just played a couple nights ago, by far the scariest section of the game. Way scarier than anything in the first like
Maybe I'll
Yeah.
give it another chance.
half of the game I played.
Because I am itching for a scary game.
But yeah, like I do think, and especially like if you factor in VR, like I don't think anything really comes close to the experience of VR.
And you're
horror.
playing it all the way through in VR?
I'm not. I'm too scared.
Oh, okay.
Like I tried it, and I'm playing it in just with a controller now.
I think the camera might have made me a little motion sick too. I can't remember. There was like some small thing that I had trouble looking past.
Yeah. The at least the VR settings are highly adjustable. You might want to check the options if you give it another shot.
Yeah, I might. You're kind of making me want to, but
But yeah, like the house, like not to talk too much about this game because like I want to talk about horror more broadly, but like the game definitely just gets more and more bizarre and eerie the more you play, I think, and I think that's definitely like a positive. And I do want to say like just in terms of Resident Evil, Like I'm not like super into the series like a lot of people are, but as far as I understand, RE7 is seen by a lot of people as like a return to form because like I think 5 and 6 were like just basically action games.
Yeah.
So and judging from what I've seen of RE8 Village, all the previews for
Oh,
that,
that's
it
gonna be
seems like
scary. Yeah.
it's going to be it's going to continue, it seems like Resident Evil's back basically. Uh and I think that's really exciting, especially I think we had RE3 remake come out earlier this year. We're probably going to get RE4 remake next year, and we'll have like a huge. And RE4 is seen by a lot of people as like one of the greats of all time. So, I think it's a good time to be a horror fan.
Yeah, I agree. Especially because I think game horror is kind of evolving to be smarter a little bit. Not that it's ever. I think game horror has actually typically been one of the smartest genres in games. Like if you look back at like Silent Hill.
So yeah, Silent Hill is pretty revolutionary.
When I think of Silent Hill, I think like I didn't know this for a long time. I played Silent Hill for the first time like within the past 6 months, I think. And like that's a smart game. Like I don't think it. I think it's very hard to go back to. Like some of the puzzles are really.
Hmm.
I don't know. Maybe I just don't have the head for it, but I liked Silent Hill a lot.
No, that's definitely like that's not an unusual opinion by any means.
Yeah.
I do think I do want to see a horror game by Hideo Kojima, especially after.
Yeah,
Have either of you guys played PT?
Yes.
I have played PT. I didn't like it, I think, as much as everyone else did, but I was very much excited for the idea of a full game coming from it. And then, of course,
Yeah. And of course, he was working with Guillermo del Toro, and that didn't pan out for whatever reason. But, now that he's on his own, he can do whatever he wants. Maybe after he got the weirdness out of his system with Death Stranding, we're going to see him return to that horror idea.
Well, I hope he
Kojima's
does
always
weirdness.
had weirdness in his system. What are you talking about?
Yeah, no.
yeah.
You're absolutely
Kojima's
right.
weirdness is super conducive to horror, in my opinion. Like, the Psycho Mantis fight is so famous in Metal Gear Solid,
Right, yeah.
and that's totally horror.
Yeah, okay, so you guys know what I mean, though, right? Like, Death Stranding
yeah.
is weird even for Kojima,
Yeah.
I will say.
And I while I'm on that note, I love horror sections and non-horror games, like the piano in Super Mario 64. There's a horror level. I don't want to spoil it, but there's a horror level in A Hat in Time really that actually really got to me the first time I played it. It didn't really hold up. on
Yeah,
people's
stealth
playthroughs.
stealth horror sections are really good. Like I've been reading, not I haven't been really reading spoilers so much just as to like what I can expect from Demon Souls because I haven't ever played it and it's getting remade for PS5. A lot of people say that it's like closer to a horror game than any of the other FromSoft games, and I find that really
closer
exciting.
than Bloodborne.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Oh,
I just
and
love,
by the way, Connor, you mentioned you love like, the unknown as like a theme in horror. You've got to play more of Bloodborne. Like
yeah, I know.
that's right up your alley.
I've been meaning to. Actually, October's a good month for it. I've been kind of waiting for it to get to be Dark Souls season.
What does that mean?
I like to play. I don't know. I like it to be cold and like
Is that what Dark Souls season
kind of
is?
dreary and yeah, I got to be immersed.
I
But,
more prefer horror that's like in the human condition horror. Like I really liked Observer because
What's Observer?
It's a cyberpunk horror.
Yeah.
Like it's a horror that you aren't sure if you're sane or not the entire time.
Ooh, yeah.
Because you're
Yeah,
walking through
that's
this apartment complex full of like augmented humans that are affected by almost this virus.
Oh my god. I'm
And
gonna spoil.
You just
Actually,
kind
you
of
finish first.
it's so weird because you don't expect horror. You're just like a detective walking through there, voiced by what's his name? It's real famous. I think he did the main character of Blade Runner. Can't remember his name though, for the life of me. But you run around, and originally it's like, oh, you just got to investigate what happened to your son, and then you jack into someone's head, like you jack into a corpse, and it gets so much more serious from there.
Yeah, cyberpunk horror, that's kind of like I've never even thought of those two things together, but that definitely has potential.
Yeah, I mean Black Mirror level stuff basically,
Yeah, you can
and that's
do
good.
Yeah.
you can do a lot of stuff with the pretense of like jacking into a human mind
Yeah,
that
I like
on the verge of insanity.
relatively short experiences. I really like short, scary stories. There's actually a subreddit I read called Short Scary Stories that I like a lot. But there's one indie game I played on itch.io. It was free, and this was like back in like 2016, I think. So there's no way that I could find this game. Otherwise, I'd plug it because it's excellent. But so I'm just gonna spoil the whole thing. But it's like
Sure.
you wake up on this spaceship, and the first thing the computer tells you is that there are no vital signs. You're the only thing on this ship. You can't, there's nobody else going to help you. And you're like, you got to repair this ship or you're never going to get to your destination because something's gone wrong. And you go around this whole ship repairing it and stuff and fixing everything. And finally, the last thing you have to do is you have to like get into the lodging. I think there's something you need from the lodging. And you go into lodging and you find the dead crew and a mirror and you realize you've been playing a tiny robot the entire game.
Oh,
And that
man.
like you come across a mirror and that jump scared me. I jump scared myself in this game and it felt so bad.
Yeah, when you mentioned horror in space, my mind immediately goes to Dead Space. I've actually never played Dead Space.
Dead Space didn't do it for me either. I
Really?
wanted to like it. I need to give it another shot, but it didn't scare me.
Wow. Yeah, I often hear really good things about Dead Space.
What did I
With the
think,
exception of Dead Space 3. Apparently 3
yeah,
sucks.
that game's buns. But I think PC is kind of just getting a little more abstract. I've been talking about a lot of specific games, but I think PC is the most conducive platform to horror, and I don't really think that about a lot of genres. But like PC games are not afraid to get meta on you a lot of the time, and I always like that. Like your Doki Doki literature clubs, your
you can do
even
a lot of,
Undertale
like,
a little bit.
external files and putting external files in places.
Well, one of my favorite, actually my favorite horror game ever is a game called Anatomy. It's a really obscure indie game. At least I think it's really obscure. I hadn't heard of it until a YouTuber that is known for talking about obscure games told me about it. Shout out to Errant Signal. And shout out to Kitty Horror Show who made this game. But it's called Anatomy, and its tagline is "Every house is haunted." And you basically walk through all these. You walk through this one house while all these audio recordings of a fairly creepy voice talking about a house as though it's a living being happens. And this whole experience is probably less than 20 minutes. But the game closes itself periodically. It just crashes, and you have to make that
What?
conscious decision to turn it back on every time. And it just
That's
keeps
really
getting
unique.
And every time you turn it back on, it gets scarier and scarier. And you have to keep making that decision to go back in. And that really did it for me. I love that game.
That building of tension.
It's like $3 on itch.io. I can't recommend it enough. It's the best horror experience I've ever had.
See, I think this is a fascinating discussion just because, like, thinking about it a little bit, like, horror is, like, more personal than, like, pretty much any other genre, I think, of game.
Yeah, because you have to find
like,
what scares you. Yeah.
exactly. Like, what scares people is different from people to people, right? Like, so, like, what I find a scary game, you might not find a scary game, and vice versa. So I think it's fascinating discussing, like, maybe, like, talking through this, we can kind of get some insights into what we consider scary.
Like,
Yeah.
for me, Five Nights at Freddy's scared a lot of people, but it never scared me, personally. Like, at no point was I, like, jumping out of my seat
Yeah.
or, like,
I think
crapping my
Amnesia is
pants.
a really smart game in that respect because it kind of throws a lot of stuff against the wall. Like, you've got those, like, for the people that are afraid of a monster, you've got, like, the scary humanoid monster thing. For the people who are more scared of, like, an idea, you have the insanity feature.
Mhm, yeah.
And for those kind of afraid of, like, the supernatural, you have, like, the shadow monster thing. And then there's all that corridor that has the water monster that I refuse to believe didn't make every single person who played that game piss their pants.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
And then you have Amnesia 2 for a boring game that isn't scary at all.
oh yeah, a machine
See-
for pigs.
Yeah, that game's terrible.
So just
Yeah.
I've just been thinking while we're talking, like, just sort of, I guess, psychoanalyze myself here. I think the reason I find Resident Evil 7 in particular so scary is that I think insane people are scarier than most things to me. Like scarier than any monster, like actual humans that are just
Yeah.
like that like you look in their eyes and you can see that something's just not right. And like Resident Evil 7 is like full of that.
See, the thing that's scary to me is like I think of the G-Man from like Half-Life, like this, like being toyed with, and like someone who knows something you don't, and is like using it to just like mess with you, and you have no idea that it's happening, and you just don't get to understand what's going on. That's what scares me. I think.
I like being like completely unaware of what's going on, or something being so uncanny or weird that you just have no collection or can't process it. Because that's what Observer did to me. Observer was a lot of, what's going on here? Why is this man like hallucinating? Why are there 8 of him now?
I think the thing that scares me the least is like a monster.
Monsters typically have to be.
Yeah, monsters have to be done really well to be scary, I think. But I think a big aspect to monsters would be like the unknown aspect, right? Like what you mentioned before. Like the monsters in Bloodborne were terrifying because, like let me rephrase. The early monsters in Bloodborne were not scary, in my opinion. But some of the later bosses are absolutely horrifying because like the extent of your knowledge in that game is so low, like things are just so far beyond your understanding you can't even begin to comprehend what's going on, and that's scary.
So, I'm into that. I need to finish that game.
Like so I'm purposefully dancing around the word because I don't want to spoil it for you, because I don't know if you know what Bloodborne's really about.
I know it's Lovecraftian.
Okay, so you're aware that there's like a cosmic horror.
Yeah, and I know there's like an
okay.
insanity thing. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So then yeah, that's fine. Yeah, so I was referring to like the later game bosses when you're fully aware that like, so the beautiful thing about Bloodborne is like you start the game and it's like, this is like a gothic Victorian England kind of like, Jack the Ripper kind of werewolf sort of, like horror game, and you're like, okay, this is really cool, the architecture is beautiful and like very imposing, and like exactly what kind of game this is. But as you keep playing, like the layers keep peeling back and you realize what kind of game this actually is, and it's just astounding. I think Bloodborne's easily one of the best horror games ever made. One of the best games ever made by my estimation.
Surprise horror games are also very good. Doki Doki Literature Club probably falls in second for my favorite horror game of all time.
So what is that game about? Because that does not sound like a
I cannot tell you. I will.
Okay.
If you have not played Doki Doki Literature Club, I refuse to tell you what it's about. I need you to not look it up at all. It's a free game, and you will download it when this podcast is over, and you will talk to me and Mike about it tomorrow. Because
I'll do it. Yeah, sure.
It's so good, and you have to stick it out because you're not going to like the beginning of that game.
Okay.
It's a visual novel, and you got to stick it out. It's extremely. You've played it, right, Mike?
I've seen enough of it that I've pretty much played through all of it.
Yeah, I have played through it. I've watched the Game Grumps play through it. I've watched friends play through it. I love that game, and I wish Dan Salvato would do more of it.
It's free, you say?
Didn't he do?
It is free. It's free on Steam. It's free on itch.io.
Who did
I think.
Pony Island?
Cool. I don't know who did Pony Island. That's not bad either. But yeah, like PC games, I like No Players Online. That was a decent horror experience. I just think PC is super conducive because like
There's
I don't know,
it's out of game like.
But I think PS1 is also super conducive to horror because the visuals weren't refined. I think horror gets worse as fidelity gets better in a lot of ways.
I understand that argument, and I think it's true to an extent, but I think as visuals get better, horror techniques have also gotten better in games, I think. Well, not necessarily, but like I feel like
that you show, the worse.
There's more to horror than just visuals, I think. A lot of it's the imagination and like again, like you mentioned before, the unknown.
Yeah, I prefer not seeing a monster. Yeah. If there's going to be a monster, it's way scary to me if I don't see it.
Also,
Right.
good sound. Another thing we haven't talked about is sound design in horror. Something I love.
Oh my
Oh,
god,
that's
yeah.
critical.
Oh, I
Yeah,
love
that's-
sound design in horror because
That's just as, if not more important than the visuals, I would argue.
as someone who loves making horror sounds and looking
Yeah.
into how they're made, there is like an art to it almost.
Yeah, part of the reason, so like I played Resident Evil 2 Remake, and that was my first experience with Resident Evil 2. I played it last year, and one of the reasons I loved that game so much was because, like halfway through the game, someone starts pursuing you, and he's basically like, he's not really scary, physically, right? Like he's basically this tall, imposing, tall, you know what I'm talking about, Mike? Yeah, tall, imposing, like emotionless man who you can't kill, who just follows you around, right?
What was
And you
his
have to
name?
run. You can't kill him. You have to run away, right? And like as you're in different sections of the police precinct and like other areas of the game, you can hear faint footsteps, and you know he's coming closer and closer, and you just have to put distance between you and him and do what you need to do before he catches you. And that sort of tension that Resident Evil 2 creates is incredible, in my opinion.
Yeah, I haven't played Resident Evil 2, but that sounds exactly like SAX in Metroid Fusion, which scared the crap out of me as a kid.
Yeah.
Are you all familiar with that game?
No.
I'm actually not.
I think it's probably the most horror that Metroid ever did. And SAX is, at the very beginning of the game, you're infected with something called the X parasite. And in order to get it off of you, they both have to inject you with Metroid cells from the baby Metroid, from Metroid 2.
Yeah.
And they also have to strip off most of your suit because it's too infected. SAX is the parasite basically cobbling together those suit parts into a second Samus that is far more powerful. It can one-shot you, and it basically it just shows up, and you have to run from a far more powerful version of yourself several times in the game.
That's cool.
Yeah, and I'm not doing it justice because it actually does, like, it's horror. It's not just a scary bit in a non-horror game. They clearly wanted SAX to be terrifying.
Mm-hmm.
It's
There's,
like a
like,
gremlin
echoey-
scenario sometimes.
It's echoey footsteps. It's like hiding and hoping that they don't check where you're hiding. It's all that. And you never know when they're going to pop up. They're like, a lot of the time it's forecasted a little bit, but there are a few times in the game that SAX just happens to be waiting for you in a room that's in your path. And there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Like, I don't know, like just talking, like I've never really had this discussion before, but just talking about these horror games, like I feel like horror is probably one of, if not the most creative, like genres you can take on in gaming, because there's so
but
many
then
ways
there's
to do
also
it well.
games that are just like
I mean, so many games fail to do it right. but,
Slender. Like,
I don't know. I was pretty scared by Slender, but
yeah, I'm sure you were.
yeah, I'm a
It's-
baby.
It's games that like you can do horror good, and then you can do horror like, oh, it's just YouTube bait. Because
Yeah,
a lot of like those acclaimed horror games, like they were just pretty much content creator bait.
Yeah, jump scares are just lazy, in my opinion. Like, there's a place for them, but if that's all you got, you've got nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like
It's very
Observer
surface
made
level.
good use of jump scares while also like exploring the human psyche and like
Yeah.
other cyberpunk themes.
I'm much
'Cause
more
you're-
interested in feeling uneasy than feeling scared.
Because you're
I think.
basically in like
tension's a big part of
yeah, like Observer
Uh,
puts you into like a cyberpunk, almost ghetto. Like it's low income, everyone's poor, and
Yeah.
everyone's suffering, and you're like, oh, this is spicy.
I want to give one more shout out while we're on the topic of horror, and unfortunately, it's not a game you can actually play. It's a YouTube series that follows a fictional PlayStation 1 game. It's weird. It's like a horror Let's Play, except it's a game that doesn't exist.
That's wild.
And it's extreme. Yeah, so like the events of the Let's Play and the events in the game are sort of intertwined as like a full horror narrative. And it's hard to explain why it's so good, but it's just the best. It's called Petscop. Petscop. It's not terribly long, and I would recommend it to anyone in the mood for some good horror. it will absolutely put you on edge, and I do not believe it. I don't think at any point resorts to a jump scare. I'm pretty sure it just is
Unsettles you,
extremely
Uncanny
unsettling.
and unsettling.
Yeah.
Horror done right is just incredible. I think horror done right is so much more evocative of just your humanity
It just sticks
and
with
other
you.
things. Yeah, it really just gets under you.
Yeah.
Now, there's a lot of really good horror games, but they're always outshone in like
Yeah, horror's just not the most
Content
popular
shows
genre
by
in like anything.
low effort
Yeah.
horror games, like or horror games.
Have you guys
that
seen
just keep churning out?
the original Amnesia devs are putting out another Amnesia game? I think this one's actually Amnesia 2. Amnesia Machine for Pigs was not Amnesia 2. I don't really know. But Amnesia Machine for Pigs was made by a different studio, which is why it wasn't very good, I guess.
Dark Descent. That was the first one, right?
Dark Descent's the first one. That game's phenomenal.
Yeah. I gotta
And it
play
also
it.
had some
I
pretty
own
good,
it.
like-
I haven't played it.
It has some excellent side stories. It'll scare your pants off, but I hope Amnesia 2 or whatever the new one is, I hope ends up being as good as Amnesia 1. Because A Machine for Pigs I was so excited for. I bought it day one. And like there are points where you're in a room with the monsters and they just don't even look at you. Like the moment that happened, the rest of the game had no chance of being scary anymore. Like it just kind of took me so out of it.
Yeah, it kind of sucks when like your horror concepts are let down by failures on like a technical side.
Yeah. Oh, Subnautica is a good horror game.
Ooh, yeah,
Subnautica,
that's also
yes,
my
that is one of those
two playlists.
unintentional horror games.
Yeah, I don't even know if I've ever been super scared in Subnautica, but I've definitely been tense, and that's good enough for me.
Oh no,
like,
Subnautica
yeah.
is literally like scared the crap
I need to
out of
finish
me.
it really bad. I think I talked about it on the podcast, but there are a couple things in Subnautica where you just have to like, oh, you're deeper than you've ever been, and like it's super spooky, and like you don't really understand what's going on, and like I think the actual narrative of the game is pretty scary too. I'm not going to spoil any of it, but like as a concept, it's quite scary. And then, oh, you need a new suit to dive deeper or something. Better go back up to the surface and dig through scrap for an hour and a half. That'll be fun, right?
The gameplay
And then I'm
loop.
like, Alt F4, this is terrible. I'll watch a Let's Play. Like, they really lost me on that. I'm actually really frustrated because the good part of that game is amazing, but the bad part of that game is like watching paint dry.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
resource gathering could have been more streamlined.
I don't have a problem with resource gathering. My problem is like I think that's even fun enough. Like I have to remember where these resources are, but like
The
looking
grinding.
for blueprints. It's looking for blueprints that I find super boring. Like going along these totally safe areas on the surface, essentially, with the exception of like one Leviathan that I've pretty much figured out how to avoid. And like just looking around until I finally find the right thing to scan. That's not fun. I'm not having a good time.
Yeah, the game really suffered in just that respect.
Yeah,
And a
I
lot of
wonder
it
if
turned
Below
to
Zero
tedium.
was better.
Below Zero hasn't even launched it, has it?
Oh, I thought I had.
I don't think so.
I do
But yeah,
think
I really like. I want to finish it really bad because the under like when I'm taking my Cyclops down deeper than I've ever been, and like it's dark and I'm a little tense because I only have a certain amount of clean water and food with me, and I'm watching my health, I'm watching the monsters, I'm watching my electricity, and then I find out that oh, you haven't been down here that long and you can't go any deeper and you have to go back up and blah 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 blah. It kills the mood entirely.
Yeah, it's I don't know. I think in general, like horror games have it tougher than other genres, like the balancing act in terms of like the player experience. You know, like if there's even one step wrong, that could turn a player off completely. You know, like
Oh yeah.
like I'm pretty convinced Resident Evil 7 is a really good game, but like that first section didn't scare you, so you turned it off and never went back. You know, like horror games, like I feel like there's less of a chance for them to make mistakes.
Yeah, I agree. You really have to be drawn in at the beginning. And like, I'm somebody who gets drawn. I'm a sucker for good narrative, and I didn't really care about the characters in Resident Evil 7.
Right? Yeah.
And so,
Yeah, I mean,
like,
I still don't really care about the characters, to be perfectly honest.
I mean,
That's not really.
Resident Evil 7 was Resident Evil's return to its roots of survival horror past whatever campy punching boulder nonsense happened in the last 3 games in the series.
I think it was 5 and 6, right? 5 and
I
6
think
were the
6
ones
is where
that-
he punches the boulder. That's
Yeah,
like
I'm
the
not sure.
jump the
Yeah.
shark moment of Resident Evil. Like that's the point where it's this is no longer survival horror. This is like a bizarre action movie.
Yeah, 5 and 6 are pretty much looked down upon, but like it seems like Capcom knows what they're doing now, so that's pretty exciting.
Who owns Silent Hill? Is that Konami?
Yep, it's Konami.
Yes.
PT was
Okay.
actually going to be a Silent Hill like reboot
Right. Yeah.
by Kojima, and then they
That would have been. Could you imagine how good that game would have been?
Oh,
Yeah, like,
that,
that would've
just
been
that
incredible.
first sequence, like that. I think it's like the prologue, isn't it? Just that
P-
sequence is good.
Yeah, PT, like it's not even a prologue. It was just like a standalone concept, sort of meant to illustrate what they were going for with their next game. But that next game never came.
And it felt good. Like everything about PT felt good. It didn't feel.
Yeah, and I think to speak to PT's strength a little bit, I've had friends who are not into gaming at all. Like they don't own any game systems, don't play video games at all. Message me and be like, "Have you heard about this PT thing? I looked it up on YouTube, and it's super scary." And that to me tells me that Kojima was onto something pretty special there.
I think video games have the highest potential for horror.
I 100% agree. Yeah,
I mean, I like horror movies, and
I
I
think-
love a good horror book.
I mean, it just makes
But-
sense. The more you up the interactivity,
Yeah.
the scarier the scary thing is going
yeah,
to be.
especially like you were saying, VR is like VR horror is
is
just,
peak horror, I think.
Yeah.
Like I firmly believe that.
Yeah, it's horror in itself is a very subjective genre, and what one person finds horrifying, another might find like funny or just
Case in
hilarious.
point, I find everything terrifying, and Connor finds almost nothing terrifying.
I find
I'm a
body
difficult
horror
guy
not
to stare.
terrifying. Body horror is actually kind of like intriguing, less so horrifying.
Yeah,
more like
actually,
intriguing.
body horror doesn't bother me at all. That's like one thing that doesn't mess with me even a little bit.
So you can believe what you will when I say this, but like gore, I want to say it doesn't really scare me, but I don't like it. Gore is like gore in games doesn't bother me too much, but like really gory live action movies and stuff kind of turn me off. Like I kind of just don't want to watch anymore.
Did you ever see Midsummer?
No, I haven't.
Okay, don't watch that.
Watch that, yeah.
Say my girlfriend really wants me to watch Midsummer, I think. So
I mean,
I'll probably.
I mean,
it's not
it's
like-
an don't get me wrong, it's an incredible movie, but like the horror and the flavor of horror in that movie is incredibly unique, but there is like insane gore in that movie.
It's not something I can't get past, but like my cousin really wants me to watch Texas Chainsaw Massacre. But
Yeah, that
the
just seems excessive.
chainsaw scene in Scarface just it made me uncomfortable in a way that isn't like the enjoyable, like unsettling, uncomfortable.
hmm
I just don't like seeing that stuff. Like, you know?
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I don't think it
Like,
really affects me. But the only one that really did was that one scene in Midsummer. And Mike, if you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about.
I don't think I've seen it.
Oh, okay.
If it's
I thought,
just the
I
one
thought you said you
scene,
did.
then it's probably tasteful
heard of
and I
it.
would like it.
Yeah, it's literally just one scene. Yeah,
Then it's probably like important to the plot, I guess. Like
it definitely.
things I don't
is.
like is when like it's a ghost story, but for some reason the ghost pops a dude's chest open. Like that's not.
Oh, what was that movie where that guy stuck his hand in the blender? Was that that was Unfriended?
Oh my god.
Yeah. It's like, oh, this is horrifying. Someone out there found that movie horrifying, but I just watch it and I laugh at it because it's bad. Like sometimes it's like, oh, the ghost of the social media girl is causing me to stick my hand in a blender that is conveniently
Yeah, that's
placed
just
in
dumb.
front of my computer.
the blender in front of your computer.
What kind of person
That's
keeps a
where I keep my
blender in
blender.
their room?
Oh, I really like. I think you and me actually watched this movie together, Ahmed. 10 Cloverfield Lane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cloverfield was
Just speaking of
interesting.
horror, I guess we're kind of really off topic now.
Yeah, we're
but
not even talking about video games.
We've lost.
No,
the,
I
I
just
mean,
like
I-
horror.
lost the plot.
I'm just in the mood for some good horror
Yeah.
now.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen very few horror movies, but the ones I have seen, I think, are very, very good and are regarded by like enthusiasts to be among the best.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, have you guys seen Hereditary? That movie
No.
scared the pants off of me. My God. Okay. But yeah, I think that's a pretty good discussion on horror, and obviously we can do some more if we're playing more horror games. As Halloween's coming up and stuff.
Yeah, I'll probably still be doing horror well into November because the world is terrifying right now. So
Yeah, I'd just be more terrified of it or something else. I don't need horror games right now because the 2020 has been terrifying enough.
Yeah.
I gotta stretch Halloween out because I don't get a Thanksgiving this year.
Yeah. No, low key though, like Halloween is the best holiday. I think I've
It's really
always
good.
loved
Halloween- This is just a view into my life, but Halloween is like the only day of the year historically that I get like drunk and like actually party,
Yeah.
and I love Halloween.
Yeah. I just love the whole like. I just love dressing up, honestly, and having it okay that everyone dresses up too. That's always just really appealed to me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
I think
Halloween's
my
an
quarantine
excuse
hair-
for me to go like out in like a chicken onesie or wearing a gas mask or something stupid.
And
Dude,
have it
my-
be like 100% acceptable, you know?
I think last year I went as a plague doctor. Like I showed up to
Oh,
an
yeah.
EDM concert as a plague doctor, and it was perfectly normal.
Dude, if this quarantine keeps up, I'm gonna have pretty solid Breath of the Wild Link hair by Halloween next
Oh,
year.
really?
Ooh.
Yeah, and I'll be able to pull that off, so that'll be nice. You guys want to move into games we've been playing?
Yeah, sure.
I want to go first.
Okay. Okay, stop. You've been hyping this up for like weeks now, so this better
Yeah,
deliver.
and it's gonna
Better
be
be a
kind of
hot
lame.
take.
It's gonna be it might be a little lame now because I've hyped it up too much. But I pulled down an emulator and I have been playing Banjo Kazooie,
Oh, nice.
and
you
it's
hate
a
it,
bad
we guess.
game.
I agree.
Monster. Well, okay,
was
so here's the
better.
thing. I disagree with that, but I also think that like my nostalgia for that game is so high that like if I played it for the first time today, I might not like it either.
Yeah, I was playing through it, and the whole time I'm playing through it, I'm just like, wow, this is Spyro, but the controls aren't very good. Like, that's all I got. Like, and I gave it a lot of chances. I played
What
through,
level did you get to?
I played through Mumbo's Mountain. I played through Treasure Trove Cove. Terrible level, by the way. Treasure Trove Cove is the worst. I hated
like
every moment
Treasure
of Treasure
Trove
Trove Cove. Huh?
I like Treasure Trove Cove.
I couldn't stand it. That's where I got filtered last time I tried to play this game. And then I moved on to Crank Cavern.
Clanker's
That one's
Cavern.
probably my least favorite level.
I liked it. It was probably my favorite so far, but I still didn't like it very much.
I honestly, I actually agree with Connor. here.
Clankers. Yeah, I just don't. It really is just like, and a little bit of this might have been my emulator, but like these controls don't feel good. And I know I said that about Super Mario 64 too, but Super Mario 64 is a joy to go back and play today, and I still like super enjoy it and everything. But these controls for Banjo-Kazooie, like, I just didn't like them. They felt bad. Like everything felt wrong all the time. Like I just felt like they weren't working with me. The controls were working.
Yeah, I don't know.
with me every step. Like a lot of the challenges were like these super simple platforming things, but the only reason they were hard is because the controls were awful.
Yeah, I mean, I've gone back like when I say recently, I mean in like the past 4 or 5 years and replayed all of Banjo-Kazooie, and I still enjoyed it as much as I did when I was a kid. So I'm obviously the wrong, like I can't bash it like you are, but I do think like a big part of it, like I think objectively speaking, its controls aren't as good as some of its contemporaries, but I do think the nostalgia factor and just like
Yeah.
I played that game on N64 when it came out and it stuck with me. I feel like all of that definitely contributes to my love of the series.
Honestly, on Kazooie, I actually prefer 2E more because 2E improved everything that was bad about Kazooie. Like,
See,
the arbitrary
I
collectathon
love 2E.
requirements.
I love Banjo-Tooie as well, and I think I think
felt
both are
tired.
fantastic for different reasons. But a common complaint I see about 2E is like it's just too big for like its own good, and I don't really agree with that. But I understand the too big comment. Like the levels are pretty big, and I think that's kind of symptomatic of what we saw with Yooka-Laylee. Like 2E was maybe just pushing the edge of like how big a level can be and still be engaging, and then Yooka-Laylee just like blew past that, and the levels were just way too huge and like empty.
Yeah, Yooka-Laylee was way too big. Like everything felt like it's sure to traverse. Shouldn't be
Yeah.
a thing in a 3D platformer. Like Hat in Time didn't suffer from that.
Oh my
Like,
god, I had time
moving
is so
through
good.
the levels felt good.
Yeah, I feel like so the only real collectathon I feel like I've ever played is Super Mario Odyssey. Like I've played Super Mario 64, but I'm hesitant to really call that a collectathon. It's more like a mission-based platformer.
Yeah.
And Super Mario Odyssey was fun to me because the movement controls felt sublime the whole time, and the moons were really just something to do
With the movement.
while you used these amazing movement controls.
Yeah.
Whereas I play Banjo-Kazooie, and the controls are like gargling mud, and I also have to find jiggies, I guess. And there's no hint where the jiggies are. And also you need a ton of these note things, and if you die you don't get to get any more, or you have to start over.
See, Tui fixed that. Tui got rid of that whole stupid system.
And like I feel like there was limited ammo on a lot of things. Like I was never gonna run out of eggs, so why did I have a limited number of them? And also I was never gonna run out of red feathers, so why did I have a limited number of them? I don't know.
The red feathers is just so you don't get to fly forever.
That makes sense, I guess.
But
yeah, that's fair.
a big part of Banjo-Kazooie, to me at least, was I thought the levels for the most part were really charming, but like more than that, I think like I loved the characters so much in Banjo-Kazooie, and their like grunts and squeaks and stuff. I know that can get really annoying for some people.
Yeah, I found every bit, and this is gonna be a really, really hot take. I found every bit of the sound design in this game very annoying, including all the music. I really didn't
wow.
like
That's
it.
a real hot
that's
take.
the hard disagree there.
Oh,
The
how
mu- I
could
think
you-
the music for Banjo-Kazooie might be the best for me. Like I love Grant Kirkhope, I
Yeah,
think.
Grant
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's his
Grant
name.
Kirkhope. Yeah,
His
I,
score in
Trash Talk the
Banjo-Kazooie is
legend.
just next level, I think.
I didn't like it. There was not a single level that did not kind of annoy me. Like
Oh, God.
I feel bad because I don't like ragging on games, but
Yeah.
like
No, I mean you have to give your opinion. You know?
that's why I was so excited about this one, is because I was like, this is a game I don't feel too bad about ragging on because everybody likes it. And like, so, I'm not gonna, Grant Kirkhope's not gonna listen to this and feel sad that I don't like it, like,
Yeah.
because obviously, he's the best. But I hated it. I did not have a good time. I'm
Yeah,
not gonna
I mean-
finish it.
Like the music for me is like so infectious. Like I could easily like hum tunes from various levels of that game even today after not playing for like years. Like
You know,
it's
what's
just
funny?
ingrained in my brain.
The really funny part about this is I don't think I would have liked this game as a kid either. Looking back, because I
Yeah.
was really easily annoyed as a kid. I hated Disney World.
God.
Yeah,
like,
no, I still hate Disney World to this day. Like, the only
like,
purpose
I don't
of
think
me going to like a Disney World is to get drunk at Epcot.
there was no time in my life in which I would have enjoyed Banjo-Kazooie. I don't think.
Wow.
I was more of a
that's-
Universal person. Like, I want big themed
Never been.
attractions. Universal's great.
Yeah. But yeah, that's my games I've been playing this week. That and copious amounts of Spelunky too. I
Right,
want to give
yeah.
a shout out. Noita 1.0 came out today. That's a game, or Noita, Noita. I've talked about it on the podcast before. It's like the Falling Sand sort of physics-based roguelike type deal with magic and
Uh-huh.
stuff. That came out 1.0 today, and I'm excited to check that out. But I just wanted to give it a shout out.
Sweet. Mike, you got anything?
All right, so in celebration of like Cyberpunk launching in what is it, a month now? I've started
Yeah,
playing
it's
like a
super
lot
close.
of staple Cyberpunk games, and the first one I started with was Deus Ex: Human Revolution, because I've been meaning to
Nice.
finish it. And I love it. It's great. It feels good to play. I've put some shaders on it so it's moody. It's in the same vein as all the other life or simulation
Immersive
type
sim?
games. Yeah, immersive sim games. It's a lot of that same DNA, so there's not much like surprising about it. But it feels good. The progression feels good. The stealth options don't feel good, but it's just the kind of game it is.
Yeah.
But I love it. The universe is great. Everything feels grim dark, but you're also in the middle of like a renaissance of cybernetics. Like you can tell things are going shady behind the scenes, and you can just kind of get glimpses of that. Because it's very conspiratorial. Like the Illuminati are involved some way, shape, or form every event in the game. And you just kind of get glimpses of that over the course of the game.
Mm-hmm.
You don't quite understand, but you slowly start to piece together that things aren't as they seem. Like maybe there is shadowy figures manipulating the media or whatever, pointing it's like, oh, augmented people are bad, or buy more augmentations from this mega corporation.
Does the game kind of play like Mass Effect? For some reason in my mind, I always had those two kind of like associated from a gameplay perspective. It's a third person
It's
game,
first
right?
person. It's entirely
okay.
first person, as our most immersive sims. Third person only in cover.
I see. Okay.
And you have multiple ways of solving like a problem. Like I snuck through an entire base through the ventilation shafts, only appearing on the ground to get into another ventilation shaft.
That's Metal Gear-esque.
Or alternatively, you could have gone in guns blazing. My only problem with the game is that it has boss fights that are... I've encountered one so far, and I know there's a bunch more. And they feel out of place. Because you're sneaking through here, and then all of a sudden you are forced into a combat confrontation, regardless of your playstyle. And so if you're not armed to the teeth, you have to be creative and like throw gas canisters at a guy.
Yeah, that kind of reeks to me of like them saying like, "Hey, we need to put boss fights in this game, so let's even though it doesn't gel with our design philosophy."
There's still like a variety of choices the boss fights can produce. Like going around this first arena, you could hack some turrets to fire at him, or you could throw gas canisters at him. It gives you a lot of options rather than just like shooting him in the face till he dies. And I like
that's
that.
Good.
I don't like bosses like shoot at him until he dies. It's you could shoot at him, but you could also not shoot at him and hack the turrets or open a garage door full of ammo. So it gives you enough options where you're not like super dissatisfied, but it still feels out of place. Yeah. That and stealth is kind of wonky.
But overall, you're liking the game a lot, right? Yeah, Deus Ex is pretty well renowned, except for the latest one, I think.
No, even Mankind Divided, renowned well within the community that plays it. It just didn't sell well enough. Like the only Deus Ex game everyone wants to forget is the second Deus Ex, which was the Invisible War. That's the reason you've never heard of it, is because
I've never heard
people
of it.
that talk about it are those who are in the community, and even then, we don't like to mention it.
Ah, okay.
Although I'm not even in the community, I haven't played the first Deus Ex yet. I need to. It's on my list.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of your Cyberpunk month, right?
Yeah, it's part of Cyberpunk month. I'll probably talk about it at some point if I get around to playing it. Because I'm going to finish Human Revolution and go to Mankind Divided and then play the original Deus Ex. I'm playing chronologically. I'm
looking forward to the inevitable... the day we record and the game you're playing is Cyberpunk 2077.
Oh yeah, no, it's gonna happen probably in October.
I'm excited for the game, not as excited as a lot of other people, but like I am going to play it eventually. I think I'm gonna wait for the next gen patch to hit and then pick it up. But like I'm excited to hear impressions on it.
That event is I think next week. What's the date for next week? 7 days from now? No, I won't be talking about. I'll probably date.
Okay.
In 2 weeks, I'll be talking about Ghost Runner because I've played the first 2 levels and my initial impressions are good.
Yeah.
I'm not going to talk about it a lot because it's not out yet and I don't have a full grasp of the actual launch game.
Understandable.
Hard to say a lot about a game from the first 2 levels, but I'm in love already. And definitely spending that $15 on it.
Sweet. Okay, I can go next. So as I alluded to earlier, I've been playing a lot of video games. I've been playing, so I mentioned Call of Duty Warzone earlier in the podcast, and I'm impressed with how good this thing is. So Call of Duty Warzone, probably everyone knows what it is, but in case you don't, it's Call of Duty's take on Battle Royale, and there's 150 people on one giant map. And have either of you played Warzone?
No, yeah, I like it. The only reason I don't have it installed is because it's 200 gigs.
It's massive, yeah. But I think it's probably one of the better done battle royales. And what I really was impressed by was like its unique gulag mechanic. You guys know what I'm
I
referring
liked
to?
that.
Yeah, so like if you die, you have one chance essentially. So you're sent to the gulag, and you have to 1v1 someone, and if you win that 1v1 fight, you get to redeploy. So that was really sort of a unique twist in the battle royale formula that I haven't really seen before. And even if you lose that chance, if your teammate has enough money, they can buy your revival as well. So it's interesting in that like death is definitely not the end like it is in lots of other battle royales. Like you still have chances to come back.
Isn't the
And
gulag also like randomized loadouts too?
Yes.
So you have to adapt.
Yeah, so both you and your opponent have the same loadout, but it's random. It could be anything. So like you do have to you do have to, beat your opponent head on, and you have the same tools, but
Yeah, it's a
like
fair
what those tools are can be different. But yeah, like I've been enjoying it quite a bit. I've been playing with my cousin, and like I always praise Call of Duty games. Like their gameplay is just so good. Like I think Call of Duty nails first-person shooter gameplay.
Yeah, I think tight is the best word for Call of Duty.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. Like
it's
it's
so
just
tight.
everything's snappy and everything like feels like quick, and it's great. And I think like even though I suck like a lot at the game, like I think it's super fun to play, and I think like this is the first battle royale I've played in a long time that I actually have like desire to play over and over again. So I think that's
Other than Fall Guys.
yeah.
I don't know. I haven't
touched
played Fall Guys in a long time. It got old.
I haven't either. I haven't touched season 2 yet.
I've been meaning to check it out though. Like I will at some point.
I feel like
I really
Fall Guys
hope-
got old, and Among Us kind of replaced it, and like the Gestalt consciousness that is our culture.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, Among Us definitely took Fall Guys' place like instantly. That was kind of wild.
I do hope Fall Guys takes a page out of like Apex Legends and Call of Duty Warzone's book if they ever do a team-based game mode. Sorta. Where like if you do something fairly difficult, you can bring back a dead teammate or something.
Yeah, I don't think Fall Guys will ever go down that route. I don't think.
Well, the developers
that
talked
kind of
about
game.
going down that route
Oh,
before.
really? Okay.
Yeah. And in one of the interviews, they said that they wanted to do a team-based, like,
Mode.
yeah, and not necessarily all team-based games, but like races and stuff too. But like, being on a team would be somehow significant in it.
Yeah.
So like maybe you'd have to get first to bring back a teammate or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, they said the main reason that wasn't in it at launch was that they didn't expect this big of a community, and they didn't want to split it. Although I don't know how big the community is now because a lot of people have moved on.
Yeah,
A lot of people
I'm
got
sure
tired
it's
of
still
it.
pretty big.
But yeah, I mean, I would play it. Honestly, the thing that makes me so mad is I still can't see names, and something about that just rubs me the wrong way, and I get angry and I turn it off.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of it should be fixed by now.
It should be.
Like
I'm sorry, I've kind of swiped your game you've been playing about, Ammon. But
oh, no worries, no worries. So yeah, just in the interest of time, I'll go through my next ones. So I mentioned Resident Evil 7 Biohazard. I've been playing through that with my sister, and that's quite a bit of fun. It's super spooky.
are you back in Charleston right now?
Yeah,
Okay, not to dox you.
yeah. So I'm gonna be I'm gonna be moving here soon, but
Good luck
yeah,
selling the house.
yeah. Well, I'm trying to rent it out actually, but we'll see how
okay.
it goes. But yeah, Resident Evil 7 Biohazard, I think it's super scary. I think so the first person perspective is also a sort of new thing for Resident Evil, starting with this game, and I think it does it really well. And I think the reason the movement is so slow in that game is because I think the VR integration and just the fact that you're wandering through a house the entire game.
Yeah, the map's fairly small, isn't it?
It's small, but I'm really impressed with I guess the level design, the way the secret corridors of the house fold in on themselves, and you open up pathways to areas you've been before. It reminds me a lot of Dark Souls, honestly. And I think even though the house is small, I keep you there's definitely a sense of progressing through the house and discovering new things, and that hasn't gone away yet for me, at least. So, really enjoying Resident Evil 7 Biohazard. And the final game I want to talk about is one that Connor talked about last time, and that is Hades. So since the last episode, I've purchased Hades and put in over 25 hours into that game. and I am in love with this game. I think the gameplay is phenomenal. Like
Have you
I
beat
love.
it
But if I beat it, you mean gone through a whole run?
yet? Yeah.
Yes, I've done that.
I haven't yet. I kind of stopped playing it when Spelunky 2 came out. I haven't beaten it yet.
So my attempt number 21 was when I finally cleared a run. But apparently, so that's not the quote unquote end of the game, right? The story still continues, and I hear there's actually a way to get credits to roll. So like I
I
haven't.
believe you have to beat it more than 10 times.
Okay, so I think I'm around 5 right now. But the thing I love most about Hades, and just an attempt not to repeat too much of the stuff you said last week about the story and stuff like that. In terms of the gameplay, I love how each run so far, and I've put in like 40 plus runs already, feels pretty much entirely unique. Just the way that the weapon combos with like the gods power ups and stuff like that, it changes the gameplay from run to run enough to where like I feel like I'm playing not a completely different game, but a completely different like play style, and that to me is super exciting. Like I
like
love,
that it incentivizes you to use the different weapons too.
yeah, and I love experimenting and finding new combinations that like work really well. And like there's some combinations that are just so OP that like they steamroll the whole game that I've discovered. But like most of the combinations are like very well balanced, and like you really have to like. So like if like your cast is enhanced in a certain way, you would play around that, as opposed to like another playthrough when your weapon itself is boosted in a specific way and you build around that, or like in another playthrough where your dash is like your main way of attacking. Like I've even had that before. Like my dashing was my main way of clearing the levels. So I think Hades is Supergiant's best game by far.
I agree with that. Yeah.
That's saying
and I love
a lot.
Bastion.
Yeah, that's saying a lot considering what they've put out before. They've put out incredible games in the past, and I know you touched on the story last episode, Connor, but I think the story is quite remarkable. The way it seemed there's seemingly like interactions for everything. You know, like this the way your relationship with the characters in the House of Hades changes as you play the game and clear levels, and even the way that the levels themselves change the more you play the game. Like that's even happening now. Like the more you play, the more things change, and that hasn't even stopped after I've cleared the game. Like that's really impressive to me.
That's really neat.
And like the story progression between characters as well as the overall story just keeps going and going and going. There's seemingly like an infinite amount of dialogue in this game, and none of it has repeated for me.
And it's written so well. Like I've never cared about Greek mythology. I don't like. I think I said it last time. I don't really care for the Disney Hercules. Like I just don't like Greek mythology very much, but this game made me like it a lot.
Yeah,
like it was interesting enough that I actually think I looked some stuff up after I played it, which I think is their goal. Like all
the characters are super interesting. All of them are extremely well voice acted. You know, like when I first heard Zagreus, I was like, okay, this is just going to be your edgy like emo protagonist, and like I was so wrong about that. Zagreus is an absolutely compelling character, and I think his relationship with Hades and quite frankly, his relationship with everyone, you know, like just developing that through the game is fascinating. And, you know, like I love just living in that world and listening to those characters talk and like interact. And I can't get enough of it, to be honest. Like, I'm a huge, huge fan.
It's a good game.
I haven't played it. Can't say.
I think you'd like it, Mike, but
yeah. I think that'll do it for us this week. Wow, this has been a long episode. Yeah. I actually never even mentioned this, but the video component for this week is Warframe, and don't worry, it'll be in the description of the podcast. So
we haven't spoken a single bit about this.
Yeah, check that out. Mike's messing stuff up. You know, to be honest, like this gameplay is extremely compelling to me. I've been watching the whole time, and like it looks really cool. But yeah, if you're interested in Warframe, check out the YouTube version of this podcast. Please follow us at @Podcast Game Talk on Twitter. Like, rate, and review us on any podcast service you use and on YouTube. And click the link in the description of this podcast to join our Discord and talk to us there. Thank you, Connor and Mike.
Yep. See you guys next week.
Yeah.
See you next
See you next week.
Bye.